As for the plants, the moss has gone completely wild and I actually need to trim it really bad. What's up? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Bob Moss. These are my nano tanks and you're here to see me set up another one, I hope. As you can probably tell, some things have changed in my shrimp room and I will be getting to a full shrimp room tour one of these days. I've said it before, but I am super busy in my real life, which doesn't leave me a lot of time for this whole YouTube thing. Sorry about that. I haven't forgot about you loyal fans and I am still trying my best over here. I still have too many ideas and not enough time. And I do have about four videos worth of footage taken that I just need to find the time to actually edit and put into a digestible format with my little touch of comedy, as you guys are used to here. But anyway, enough with the blabbering and excuses. Make sure to like the video if at any point you like it, if you subscribe if you enjoy the content, and let's get into it.
We have a lot to learn today. We sure do, Mr. Hayat.
As usual, I'm going to be using Amazonia version 2 soil. I use the orange label for the most part, as the gold label does cost a bit more. So far, I've had success breeding Caridina on this, so it's what I'm going to stick with. I have a 20 gallon, that's an 80 liter, tall or standard aquarium, depending what you want to call it. I did get this used, so you will see at times some tape or adhesive I hadn't removed at the time of filming from the outside of the tank. I'm going to be keeping this relatively simple, but effective, using some basic rooted plants and some spare Hardscape I had from other tanks I've torn down. Since I'm doing some rooted plants, I'll add these nutrient things that come in the bag. My understanding is they're basically just a type of root tab, as the orange label V2 doesn't contain all the nutrients needed for rooted plants, but it does buffer the pH just fine. Obviously, now you're adding your substrate. For rooted plants, you want a couple of inches of this stuff to keep them in place. If you're not doing rooted plants, you can use a much more shallow layer of substrate. Once that is in and graded to your liking, it's good to add some driftwood.
Oh, you dirty girl!
This large piece is for my old Bloody Mary tank where it was laying long ways, but since this tank is so tall, I'm going to put it in like this and lean it up into the corner here. I have a couple pieces of dragonstone with some moss growing on them that were from the same build, so I'll put them next to the wood, progressively getting smaller in size. This allows the focal point to be slightly off center and will draw the eyes naturally across the tank, which gives it a good aesthetic feel. To finish off the hardscape, I have some cholla wood with java fern, a lone piece of dragonstone with some java fern, and finally, some of you may really like this, I have cholla wood with some bucephalandra attached to it. I finally pulled the trigger and got myself a couple variations of this plant for a few of my upcoming builds. You may have seen it in a past build actually already on my Caridina cull tank. I don't fully understand all the hype, but I'm basically a boomer, so there's that. Get off my lawn. Just giving you a final look at the hardscape before I add the final plants here. For my rooted plants, I'm starting with a bunch of dwarf hairgrass. Once again, this has been pulled from my old Bloody Mary tank, so it will need to transition from hard to soft water, but it should manage that just fine. I've never actually had a problem growing this in any of my setups so far. As for planting it, you add one small clump at a time, as that promotes faster growth. If you put it all in one spot, it's going to kind of fight with itself to establish its roots, and it'll spread slower. If you spread out your clumps a little bit, it allows it to begin spreading with less competition. On top of this, if you trim the grass short after planting, it promotes horizontal rather than vertical growth, and this will give you a nice thick carpet faster than if you were to just leave it. Just like your lawn, a little maintenance goes a long way. God damn, I am a boomer, aren't I?
That term is actually considered offensive.
Carpets can be a pain to actually plant, as the wet plant wants to stick to your tools, but if you put it in the dirt, release your forceps slowly, and then wiggle them out with care, it should stay for the most part. You can probably tell I had some troubles with some of the clumps and had to brush some displaced substrate back on top to ensure they won't float away once the water is added. The more you do it, the easier it should get. Usually, these final two clumps had me tapping out, but I eventually got them in. As you can see, I have the grass planted mostly towards the back, so it has lots of room to spread forward and fill the bottom of this aquarium. Next, I add my sponge filters. I do have a few left available at bobmoss.shop. I went with 2 dual sponge to start, but as you'll see, I do eventually add a couple more. The more surface area, the better. With these, you're able to adjust the uplift tube height and the angle of the sponge so it's not pressing against the glass all the time. After all this, we add our water. This is your standard RO water with salty shrimp GH+, remineralized to a TDS around 140 40 parts per million and a pH somewhere in the 6s. Let's say like 6.5 for now until the tank is cycled. This can actually fluctuate quite a bit depending on the levels of organics during cycling. In my experience, high ammonia levels generally drops the pH in the tank, but it levels out once your bacterial colonies are established. Once again, just from my personal experience, I'm not a biologist, so someone trained on the matter may be able to explain it better. I'm just a guy with 20 shrimp tanks. Once the water is in, or even during the fill, you can connect airline to your filters. It just connects down at the side of these dual sponges here. If you ever have flow issues with this style of sponge, just remove the little black collar that this airline connects to and scrub it with a toothbrush to remove any clogging. Just a little pro tip for you there while I fiddle with these. Once they're connected, turn on your air and wow, amazing sponge filters, am I right? And now I got this next plant from a channel member while the tank was still cycling, but I wanted to add it in anyway and show you guys. This is Brazilian pennywort that was actually grown terrestrial, and I transitioned it to submerged in a bucket before planting it here. This caused a large loss of leaves, but the new submerged leaves grew in pretty quick, and here it is. Like any rooted plant, just ensure it's deep enough to stay there. Because the water is already in here, it's going to get a little murky, but it is what it is. I just ensure the roots are in there, and there we have it. I do think it looks pretty cool. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
It's beautiful.
Do you think it'll grow fine with the hairgrass, or will one outcompete the other? I do think they'll coexist just fine myself, but I would love to know what you guys think. And here it is, our final scape. We'll let it grow in from here untouched for a few months just to see what happens. I expect the moss to take off and the carpet to fill in the front, but honestly I have no idea how fast the pennywort spreads, and I do hope it just stays in that corner on the other side of the wood. If it doesn't, I'll have my work cut out for me trying to maintain this. Getting to the final steps of the setup now. As always, I toss in some floaters. I chose Amazon Frogbit for this one because this tank is tall and this allows the roots a lot of room to grow down, and it'll help fill in, you know, all that empty space in a 20-gallon tall tank. As always, I add snails. I'm going with ram's horns this time because Malaysian trumpet snails will uproot my grass. They'll probably still end up in here, but I'm gonna do what I can to prevent it for now. Next step, I do my usual ghost feeding, as this helps the cycle. It gives the snails something to eat, and whatever they don't will rot and release ammonia into the water column. I've said it in previous videos, but for active substrate tanks like this, you probably don't need to do this step, as the substrate itself releases ammonia, but it's something I do out of habit, and you know, like smoking, it's hard to quit. You then let your tank cycle for 8 weeks or so because of the active substrate. As I stated, this type of substrate releases ammonia for the first couple of weeks, and we need enough beneficial bacteria to process this before we add anything sensitive like shrimp or fish, although I do not recommend keeping them together. That just ends up being expensive fish food. The beneficial bacteria plays an important role in the nitrogen cycle. It converts the harmful compounds into less toxic compounds that can be removed from the aquarium or processed by your plants. This bacteria is found naturally in aquariums, but it needs time to establish. Cycling the tank with active soil helps to establish the beneficial bacteria rather quickly. During this process, you will see ammonia and nitrite levels rise. If you're newer to all this, it's good practice to test the water regularly to monitor these levels. Once the bacteria colonies have established themselves, the ammonia and nitrite levels will decrease, and you will notice the nitrate levels increasing. This is a sign that the tank is fully cycled and ready for your livestock. Crash course on aquarium cycling complete. I'll see you in a couple months.
Several months later.
So if you watched my last video, you've seen this box already, but there are more surprises in here that I will hopefully be showing over the next couple of videos. Today I will be revealing my new, drumroll please, yellow King Kong Caridina shrimp. They're a bit jumpy in the bag due to the stress of shipping, so let's just get them in the tank here. So drip acclimating, obviously the first thing we're going to do is empty the bag into a smaller container. I use these plastic cups to make the transition into the tank easier, but I put them in larger containers to catch any overspill during the dripping. When emptying the bags, make sure you check the corners and all the creases so you don't end up throwing out any shrimp. Once they're all in the cup, grab an airline and an air valve, and we go through the standard drip acclimation process. Give a little suck to start the flow, reduce it down to a couple drips per second, and leave it for as long as you see fit. The goal here is to match the TDS and temperature of the destination tank. You can check the water in the bag to see what it measures if you're so inclined, but I just leave it dripping for hours and it usually does the trick. Unless the source water is something like 600 TDS or higher, 4 to 8 hours will generally equalize things just fine. You don't even need to measure. You should not be in any rush to add these guys to your setup, so just give them as long as you possibly can to ensure none suffer from shock once added to the aquarium. There may be a few instances where you do want to rush it a little bit faster, but general rule of thumb is don't rush it. Just take your time. Anyway.
Later that day.
All right, here we are. Over time, you can speed the drip up if you like. I usually do it very slightly after the 4-hour mark, like you see here. This just helps in the transition process, but it's not necessary at all if you have other things going on. Now that the drip is complete, let's add these guys to my new shrimp tank. This is why I started using a cup, because you can just put it in and tip it over. I usually let them try to figure it out on their own, but after a few moments, I do the tip and lift, and the remainder of the shrimp come out and start exploring their new home. Some of you may notice that the yellow King Kong look a lot like yellow Caridina. However, Caridina shrimp are larger, and the yellow King Kongs here, they have no back stripe. You can actually mix Caridina and Caridina shrimps, and they will not crossbreed at all. So if you really wanted to check if they are in fact Caridina shrimp, just toss a Neo of a different color in there and see if you get any weird throws. I did that with some cull Neos I had, mostly greens and oranges, and all of my babies from the King Kongs are pure yellow. If they were actually Caridina, I would have got some weird mixes already. Really, the size difference is the biggest tell. The best way to describe it is that the Caridina shrimp, they have more heft to them. You can really feel them jumping around when you net them. With Neos, I never really feel them jumping in the net during culling. I'm sure there are other ways to differentiate, but that's the big tell for me. Just scoop up some adults and you'll know what I'm talking about. And to cap this off, I actually put this tank together between September and November of last year, and it being February now, there's obviously some progress regarding the plant growth and shrimp babies. So here's what it looks like now. As you can see, I actually added 3 more sponges. I hope you can see it. 2 to increase the filtration, and this 3rd in the front is just being seeded for another tank build because I have 3 empty aquariums over here that I have yet to set up. As for the plants, the moss has gone completely wild, and I actually need to trim it really bad. I just haven't, so that you guys can see how good it grows in couple months.
Thank you!
I have had to remove floaters a couple of times already, and the carpet is growing in slowly but surely. Because of the height of this tank, the carpet is going to grow a little slower than my 10s and my 20 longs. I got one of these night crew lights for this setup, and it is definitely bright enough to grow the grass. The moss has just kind of overtaken everything for now, which is causing some shade onto the carpet and the pennywort here, and it's just slowing the growth a little bit more than I would really like. Speaking of, the pennywort seems to be going okay. It's spreading rather slowly, which I'm fine with. I really had no idea what I was getting into with this plant. The moss and the depth of the tank is definitely lowering the light intensity, as I mentioned, mainly because of the depth, but the plant still seems healthy, so I'm not too worried about this at all. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching and for making it all the way to the end of the video. You know, it really helps out the algorithm. If you did make it this far, make sure to leave the comment below. It was beauty that killed the beast, and that way I know that you made it this far. It's apparently a quote from King Kong, so let's all laugh at Bob's funny joke. Ha 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 ha. Drop a like if you liked the video, subscribe if you're new here, and hit the bell if you feel like it. Who wants push notifications though? Support links are in the description below. If you just hit the little thing to expand the description, you'll see all the support links there. I have a Discord if you want to join my little community there, and you can chat with me directly. You can become a channel member if you want a shout out, because I haven't really been doing the other perks. I'm really sorry, channel members. I truly am really sorry that just life's got me by the balls, you know. Speaking of, shout out to the channel members. I got a list. Mitch Bottoма, Jake FWTX, Lucas Talbot, BJ Palmer, Zodiac246, Robert Redmond, Jens Brinkman, Drifters Workshop, Everett Irby, Kendra Crippen, Zoltan the Aquatic Stacker, and 3DRC.
Who are you people? You aren't real!
Thanks again for watching, and remember, until next time, keep your shrimp hands strong. Bye-bye now. What are we at? Okay. Okay. Well, no. All right. Got a script here. Let's just. Whew. Excuse me. This allows the focal point to be slightly off center, and it dries. Wow. Carpets can be a pain to actually plant, as the wet plants want the picture. Next, I'll add my sponge filters. I have a few left. Oh, wow. This time because Malaysian trumpet snares. I'm gonna go with ram's horns this time because Malaysian trumpet snails. Ba, 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 ba. That just ends up being expensive fish. That just ends up being expensive fish. I can't talk. My yellow King Kong Neocar. Oh, wow. God damn it. You can check the water in the bag to now that the I have had to remove. If you did make it this far,